let's see, we're recording. So we're calling the meeting to order. Let's see, do a roll call. Hold on a second. I want to close the door that the dog is barking on the other side of. Okay. Pardon the bells. Okay. Oh, let's see. Let's call the roll. Phil Posner.
Here.
Dan Schrager.
Right here.
Mark Gillis.
Present.
And Laura Davis.
Present.
And I'm present too. So we've got 5 of us. Good. Let's see. So tonight's agenda, let me go find that. It was here someplace.
The first item is the review and approval of minutes. Did everybody get a chance to look at them? They just got sent over this afternoon.
Yeah, sorry about that, but
What
better
were the
late than-
differences between the two versions?
2 different dates. One was from June and one was from July.
Oh, I got 2 from June 14th.
Oh. Okay.
John, Phil, I thought I had that happen at 1.2, but I wasn't sure what had happened, but then I found the one on the 14th.
Okay. Yeah, I printed them out so I could be sure I wasn't.
Yeah, Phil
hallucinating.
sent them a couple of days apart. I think it was like Friday and Monday. So
Okay.
anyway, so there were edits or comments. So I think we need another pass on those maybe, Phil?
Yeah, we can do that. I was able to get Aaron, I wasn't able to get it on the phone, but I got it on my desktop. So I can make those, just accept all those changes and then recirculate it through you, Aaron.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, there was some confusing sentences and misplaced antecedents that I didn't quite know who was.
Yeah, it was not my, the good thing is, having the video allows me to really, I basically listen to the whole meeting all over again, but sometimes in trying to type it out, doesn't quite cut it. I get it, but thank you for the edit.
Okay. And I had a couple of minor comments, but I think I sent you, I hope you got those.
I think so. I'll double check, but
Okay.
I'll recirculate.
Okay, so
that.
we'll look at those at the next meeting. Erin will send them around after she gets them from Phil.
Yep.
And,
And then I'll include September as well. And
There was a-
was the September meeting posted on the YouTube channel? I didn't even look.
I think so.
Okay, all right, good. So I'll take care of that too.
okay, I found my agenda. Hold on. Okay, chair report. Nothing much happening since the last meeting. What's been up? I think we met early in the month. I'm going blank on it in a second. Aaron, help me. Is there anything we worked on that was specific? We've had discussions. I had discussions. I think I reported on my attending the Public Works Commission meeting, because I think that was just before the last meeting. Is that correct?
I think so. Yeah, that sounds correct.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so they've got some placeholders in the capital budget for the things we care about, the complete streets, called something different, road maintenance and safety, public safety on the roads. And I think that's it. So if you want to go, Aaron, you've been doing, it's great having you, by the way, as a full-time person, even though you're doing 2 jobs.
Yeah, so I guess that the first update is that as of September 1st, I think I already told everybody, but I'm working as the senior planner for transportation and mobility. I'm still also doing my other role, but more so on the transportation now, which is exciting. Getting to do move things along more. We got the notice to proceed for the shared streets grant, which we received several months back now, but there's a lot of paperwork that goes ahead of the ability to actually do any work. So now we can actually start talking to people about the project and where we want to take it. I have been to the HDC once so far to give them sort of basics of what the proposal was for. It's something that, while ago now was posted up on social media, asking people what they wanted to see in downtown in terms of safety improvement. So that was having those bump outs, that was having the stamped pavement so that it was visibly different, so that we were having not necessarily visual cues like flashing beacons and things like that, that would obviously be not popular in the historic district, but something that will visually make people stop and say there's something different about this area. And that is what we're trying to do as a safety measure and a speed management technique. So I'm working with senior.
And Erin, just sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, this is the survey that went around a couple months ago, and it was specifically about downtown Concord. What?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Concord Center. Great.
Yes. And so I'm working now with our senior planner, Anne, who works with historic districts and is very knowledgeable. And we're working to try to figure out a pavement that would fit the historic nature of Concord. And I have a couple of leads, so we're excited to start working on that. The trolley is still going. I hoped I would have better updates. Our tracking software still has not yet arrived, even though we only have a month left. So it's very disappointing, and something that we're going to be very careful next time if we get another chance to run this program, is to make sure that it is in the contract that they have to start the tracking software when they start the contract. Because we said it was okay for it to start a little while in, because we understood we were doing this in sort of a rush. We didn't expect it to start 3 months in plus. So we understand that, there's obviously difficulties with getting any sort of products right now, but we had anticipated a little bit shorter lead time than we've had. So that's a little bit disappointing, but people are still using it, and we're excited to be able to provide the service. Those are sort of my big updates that I can immediately think of. Working on
I remembered what I forgot, and it was something you and I did, which is that Erin and I met with a Zoom meeting with Courtney Eaton of the CAB, the Climate Action Advisory Board. And they're kind of in the state we were in before we had Erin full-time, which is they don't have a manager, a staff person to work with. So they're kind of in a pause state. But we agreed, we had a discussion about areas of alignment between us and between TAC and the Climate Action Advisory Board. And I think the way we left it is that Erin and I would attend one of their meetings just to begin a conversation. We're specifically not going to have a joint meeting just because I think that would just make it more complicated to try to pull off. So we just want to get in, establish a connection. They're in a place where they don't have a staff person. So I don't expect a lot to come from it except to sort of getting to know each other's thing. And then we will look down the road to have a joint meeting with them so we can begin to discuss issues specifically.
Nick, could you mention who you met with?
Courtney Eaton. Courtney, Courtney, Eaton.
Great.
ATON.
Thanks.
And that was it. Okay. And you were done, Erin?
I think so. I'm working on a couple of other things that will hopefully be coming to fruition shortly. I'm hoping to have a little bit more to talk about next time. I have a couple things that I'm working on. So that's all for now.
Great. Okay.
Can we ask a few questions before you move on?
Sure. Yeah.
So the first one was about the trolley. Do you have any numbers in terms of like survey data or anything like that, just in terms of how the program is going? And is there anything that this committee can do to support the program in its last month? Like, do you have any goals for this last month of the project? Or any data that you're hoping to collect before the project is over?
Yeah. So We do have data, we have ridership numbers. I think that the biggest thing is we still want to, sort of be spreading the word that so we could have like a big finish to the trolley. I think that people don't know that it's necessarily the pilot project is ending. And so I think that they're just kind of saying, oh, well, I'll ride it eventually. But if they want to get a chance to ride it, possibly before, we don't know if the program will be renewed. We don't know if we'll get grants for funding and things like that. So if you want to come out and, support it, we really encourage people to give it a try. We still have our marketing materials and things like that that are being sent out. But we can also send them along to you if you want to push it out to anybody else. We'd
Can you, Aaron, can you send out one of those? I get these emails from the town, from the website, basically telling me about announcements and things.
Mhm.
Can you send out one of those, just suggesting that, residents, take a ride on the trolley before it's done? We'd love to get your feedback.
Yeah, I think that especially since we are coming to our final month.
Yeah, and include a link to the page and the route, whatever. It's just to make it easy.
Yeah. In just a couple of days will be our 1 month from the end mark. So
Okay.
I think that if we send something out then that would be sort of a good sort of catalyst
Great.
to get people to go visit it. And hopefully, I don't want to say anything, but hopefully there's a surprise coming. So that'd be fun. That'd be good. So.
Okay.
And go ahead, Mark. You were waiting.
Oh, why don't you finish, Laura? I just had a quick question about the stamp pavements.
Oh, yeah. So the other question about the trolley was, is there any attempt to collect feedback or data from, the businesses and institutions that are best serviced by this? So like Alcott House, Concord Museum, Colonial Inn, the other places that are sort of along the route, just to get a sense from them about how the pilot project served them and what could be improved in the future. I'm not sure. You're on top of everything, so I'm sure you've thought of this, but I'm curious if that has happened and if there's support needed there.
Well, I'm glad to know you think I'm on top of everything. Maybe I don't seem as scattered as I sometimes feel. So we have been hearing from, for instance, Orchard House asked if this were to continue, if we could get larger signage that says, this is where the trolley stops, because all we have is lawn signs right now, because we didn't want to spend too much money or install something that we didn't know was going to continue. So we just spent small money in getting lawn signs. So that's sort of, we've gotten that kind of feedback along the way. We've heard from people that, they love the idea, but they'd love to have, if there was some sort of shelter or something like that for when it's raining and, things like that would be more infrastructure for if it were to continue. We've definitely been in talks with people and getting their feedback, as well as getting some from just the riders as well. There's a survey that you can take after you ride to tell us, how was your experience? What would you like to see improve? Or are there any challenges that you see? Things like that. And I think for the most part, kind of know what the challenges are. And there are things we identified pretty early on.
Yeah. Well, great.
And do you have any rider numbers in terms of actual versus what you anticipated coming?
We do. I don't have them on the tip of my fingers right now, but we do have ridership numbers. We get them sort of bi-weekly. So every couple of weeks we get it. The last couple of weeks in, they're typically about a week behind, but it's been pretty steady. It was really slow in the beginning, obviously, because we didn't know it was coming. Until we don't know if we have the funding. We don't know if we have the funding. We have the funding. Go, go, go. So it was a slow start. I think that it grew in popularity month to month, and it's been pretty steady from what I understand. I have to go back and look at the numbers, but that's what I remember.
I think at the last meeting you said 30 people a day was the number then.
Yeah, I think that it kind of averages around there, at least on the weekends. It's a little bit lower on the weekdays when we tend to have fewer tourists, because a lot of it is, people who have family come into town on the weekends for long weekends. And they want to show them, have an easy way to get around town to show them the sights, or day trippers from the neighboring area will take it as well.
Thanks.
Mark, you have a
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, that sounds very good. And if people want shelters or larger signs, that probably means they think it's a good thing. The different museums or something could potentially ask people, did you take the trolley, or how did you get here, as a separate transportation issue? Did you drive? Did you walk? Did you bike? Did you take a trolley? It might be an interesting thing to ask them. I just wanted, I can't visualize what is meant by, is it stamped pavements? We're talking about something painted on a regular road, or we're not talking about like bricks or stones or something that would be even more distinctive, or what are we talking about? Just so I can picture it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so it looks, if it's done correctly, it looks like bricks or like pavers or something like that. But essentially it is just concrete or asphalt that has been heated and then stamped literally with a mold to make it look like stamps or pavers or whatever it is. The HGC was very interested in cobblestones, so we've been looking to see if anybody does cobblestone shapes. The problem with doing real cobblestones is ADA accessibility. They're not very ADA accessible and very expensive. So we're looking to see, I was actually up in Vermont for a wedding about a month ago. And I'm now in contact with with the town that we were staying in, their town administrator, because they had a stamped pavement that looked so good that my husband and me were arguing whether it was actually stamped pavement or not. And I had to show him that there was a piece of it that had chipped at one point, and you could see the concrete underneath. And that was the only way you could tell really that it wasn't actual pavers. So I got the information from their bid and things like that. And we're trying to see if we can get something that looks quite as good as theirs does. And theirs has been holding up pretty well, they said, and they were not properly maintaining it accidentally, but.
And so the color is different and the material is the same or different? Is it like a concrete walk strip across an asphalt road, or?
It's plastic, isn't it?
So that we do not want to do the plastic. There is a plastic color that they can put on top. I have concerns over the microplastics from the tires wearing on, because it comes off fairly quickly in just like a year or two. And with the mill dam and the mill brook right there, that makes me really nervous. So there's apparently a way that you can mix sort of like a dye into the concrete if you want to have more of a like a gray hue as opposed to a black hue or something like that. But we were looking at doing something that was more natural color, because the red, for instance, on bricks, if you use this sort of this plastic paint covering, it kind of turns pink over time as it ages in the sun. So you end up with these kind of pink bricks that are sometimes a little bit, they're not necessarily wearing very well either. So they're wearing kind of unevenly, and some of them are pink and some of them are red. And so we decided that a more natural stone color was probably the way to go.
Yeah, I think it's, anyway, I think that having a visual distinction of texture or color or whatever is really important as an additional, message to people. Slow down, pay attention. This is a multi-use area, but also, like you say, the plastic concern I think is very legitimate, in the wearing and the maintenance, because we don't want to give this good idea a bad name by not implementing it in a really good way, thoughtful way. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Was that what the results of the survey kind of indicated as well?
Yes. Yeah, people didn't really like the red brick look. They looked more of the natural stone, which I think is more consistent with a lot of what we have for stonework in town anyways. There are red bricks around, but I think you see more of the natural stone, especially like in stone walls and things like that.
I was surprised in Boston. I was driving around in Alston area, and I think it's Lincoln Street that's parallel to the Turnpike in Alston. It's like almost like a service road, and they have Belgian block, which is what some people call cobblestones, but they're the square granite blocks, almost like a crosswalk, but with the intent of just calming the traffic. And it seems to work well. It gets your attention and you slow down, and it acts sort of like a rumble strip because it's raised enough. And that's, if in a different location, not so much needed in the mill dam. But I think it might be good to check with Boston and find out how much that costs them and how it is with plows and everything, because it's a good implementation.
Laura, you had-
Yeah, just to clarify, because it's been a couple months since we saw that survey and I don't quite remember what the questions were. You also mentioned bump outs, and I'm curious, like, was there consensus on bump outs? Is that something that we're moving forward with? Is that something that's funded by this shared streets grant that we got? So if you could say more about that, that would be great.
Yeah, so we were fairly broad when we were submitting the grant, because we knew that, for instance, it could be that we went to the HDC and they said absolutely no bump outs, or yes, we absolutely need to have these. But we got a lot of people. People were across the board. Some people said we absolutely have to have those flashing beacon signs. Other people said don't you dare put those in. So you really got a little bit of both. But the bump outs were something that, because those are for the crosswalks, and those are so you don't have to go and step out and into traffic in order to be able to peer around a car. Instead, you are still technically protected by the curb, and you're able to see out. And we saw a lot of people saying that they were nervous taking, for instance, small children or strollers through that intersection because you can't see without being in the road yet. And so they said that having those there made them feel much safer in other locations. And the HDC really liked the bump outs for the crosswalks. So it's something that we're definitely looking at putting in there.
I think that's very important, because driving through some of these busy areas, it always seems like there's a van or a large SUV parked right at the crosswalk, and I have to assume there's somebody about to cross and slow down. And if somebody, on the flip side, if you're a pedestrian, the bump out, like you say, lets you get right up to where the traffic is without being in the street. So you also are cued to make a decision. Is it safe to enter the road? Otherwise, you have to enter the road to even start to see anything.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that doesn't cost us any parking spaces, does it? It's just an extension of the existing crosswalk.
I don't think so. I think that if anything, it might shift them slightly, but I don't think we'd lose any. I don't quote me on that, because that's when I'll get into trouble.
I think I saw a drawing or something that looked like it didn't cost any spaces.
Yeah, I don't think that it would, but just in case, there might be like a loss of one or something like that if things were to shift slightly, but I don't believe that there was the expectation of losing any.
So I'm guessing that they'll look something like the bump outs that we have now in West Concord, near Concord Tea Cakes. There are those two little bump outs that help pedestrians cross that particularly busy intersection.
Yeah, there, or if you think about, there's also one by Concord Academy that when they redid their
Near
sidewalk,
Academy Lane.
yeah, they did it there as well. And I think that there's I can't think of the other one right now, but there's another one that I used as an example.
Great. Well, thank you for keeping us updated on that. That's really exciting.
Okay.
Hopefully it'll
Okay.
continue to be good news.
Okay, so that was our trolley update in shared streets, and moving on, I guess.
Phil had his hand up too, Nick.
Oh, I didn't see it, Phil. Sorry. You're
You're
muted.
Phil, you're muted. Boy, I have
Thank
to
you.
really take care of him, don't I?
You just mentioned the crosswalk at Concord Academy. Did you say that Concord Academy did that, or did the town do that little project? With the
I
bumper?
believe the Concord Academy paid for that.
Okay,
Um, I think that they wanted to have it redone and it wasn't in the town's like road plan kind of thing for that period of time when they were redoing their own. I don't know if they were redoing the sidewalks or where their entrances were or something like that, but they wanted to include that. And so I believe the Concord Academy paid for that crosswalk.
and that was relatively recently, within maybe the last 8 or 10 years, right?
Yeah, I believe that's right.
Okay, yeah, okay, thanks.
One last thing before we move on from this topic. Is there the opportunity to plant any shade trees as part of this project?
So that's one of the things that we were looking at planting shade trees. There was actually a couple that were historically in Concord Center that we'd like to explore the option of adding them back in. We'll see if the engineering designs come back and say there's no way there, the sight lines are wrong or something like that, but we're going to look at it. We're also looking into putting in some planters that will help delineate the sidewalk space from the road, especially in front of Bank of America and Footstock. Those buildings right
Let me
there.
say something about trees in an area like that. When I had my ice cream business in Waltham, the town had planted trees along Moody Street, and it was a cause of great upset to many of the merchants because it obscured their signage. And it's something you have to think about. You really do have to think about that and involve the merchants in it, because it may be a good idea, but anticipated, it may not be popular with everyone.
No decisions ever are, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Include them, that's all. That's the point. This isn't our project. It's not a TAC project, but it's something whoever's working on it, Public Works or Historic Districts, whoever, or Historical Commission. Warn them. Okay, I think we're done then. We can move on then to Chamberlain Park footbridge discussion and possible vote.
So this is kind of a null point now. I've been discussing this with our Natural Resources Director, Delia Kay. And after going back over the application that we had put together, we're not quite sure if it really fits in with the grants that we were hoping to submit it for. So while we can talk about the need, I don't know if we necessarily have to be putting together a letter of support. The grant that we were applying for was specifically about resilience and natural remedies for resilience here in Concord. And while we're going to be, we were hoping to include things like pulling of invasives and planting of native plants, things like that, because it is a replacement in kind of the bridge that is there now. We don't think that it'll necessarily fit in enough with the grants that that we were applying for. So while it is still a need to replace the bridge, it is rotting in certain spots and has become a little bit risky to cross at times. We don't think that we're going to be applying for this grant for it.
I think, go ahead and give the update though, I think you were intending to anyway, just to educate us about what it is. So if we see it, we'll know.
Yeah. So this is the footbridge that crosses from the Kais Road parking lot over to Chamberlain Park, which is directly across from the Colonial Inn. So it is a fairly short path, but it cuts your walk if you're walking from that Kais Road parking lot over to, say, Monument Square to go up to the North Bridge to walk to the Reformatory Branch Trail, going to the townhouse, things like that. It significantly cuts down your walk. It's 0.1 miles to take the path and the bridge over the wetlands. And if you haven't been, it's quite a lovely walk. It's very peaceful back there. You get to walk through the wetlands a little bit without getting wet, which is great. opposed to walking down Main Street, which I believe is, I wrote it down, I think it's about a third of a mile. And then if you go around Kai's Road up past Concord Market, it's close to a half mile. So it can significantly cut down on your distance if you are trying to, for instance, get somewhere quickly, or it also just creates that that opportunity to have a more walkable town center. So it was built about 45 years ago. It has been maintained, but sort of minimally. There was never, as I understand it, there wasn't any sort of fund set up to maintain it. So it's been maintained by the Natural Resources Commission and by, you know, the facilities departments and things like that, and fixed as needed. But things that are like the main boards, a lot of them are starting to rot away now. Some of the pylons should be replaced, although we were planning on trying to reuse as many as possible, if not all of them, to try to make sure that we are keeping this resource there so that we can continue to have this walkable center. We hope that it's something that will be replaced in the future, because it is such a great thing to have. It's something that's on Carrie LaFleur's mind. She mentioned it to me. And I started looking, when I saw different grants, started to see if it would fit in. The difficult part is because we are looking to replace it in kind, as opposed to say raising it up another, 5 feet because of flooding or something like that. It is a project that probably won't be, grants are usually looking for something that's really necessary or innovative, and necessary doesn't necessarily mean replacing something, unfortunately. So that's kind of where this is. We're going to keep looking for different grants, and perhaps Delia is going to try and talk to MAPC tomorrow and see if, because I believe that tomorrow or Thursday is the last day to submit, just to try to see if they think that, maybe it would fit in, then we'll go ahead and submit it. But if not, then we're not planning on submitting it at this point.
What are you estimating the cost would be to fix it?
So there was an estimate done, I believe about 3 years ago, and I'm trying to remember. I think that it was, sorry, I've done several of these grants lately. I think that it was close to 50,000.
Okay.
That could be wrong. It could be much more than that. But we are estimating that it'll be at least double, if not triple the cost, because of labor and material shortages. Some of the bids that we got back for a different project, that was just, we got our initial quotes just like 6 months or a year ago, had almost, I believe, tripled in price from when they went out to bid. So things are more expensive than they ever have been, and grant money is still fairly sparse. So have to pick and choose what we can submit and what projects will be chosen for grants.
It's a great path. I just walked on it today, and it's really pretty back there.
Yeah.
It
I'm
does
glad to
show
know about it.
tired.
Yeah, it needs a little bit of love.
So it sounds like there isn't a process internally in the town for funding a project like this. It would absolutely require grant funding in order to be refurbished.
So there
I
could
think
be,
there are processes. It's just there's a lot of competition for the funding.
Right.
yeah, it could be something that's submitted for a capital grant or a capital funding, sorry. But like Nick said, there's a lot of different things that want funding, and sometimes something that is there's something that's more necessary, or something that's kind of fun and shiny and new. We gravitate towards those kinds of things rather than a replacement in kind. Not to say that it wouldn't happen, or for instance, we could submit for CPC money in the future or something like that, CPA. But we don't think that it's quite right for this grant after rereading it again.
Okay. Thank you. And then roadmap updates. Yeah, time to look at the roadmap again. It's been a few months since we created it and things have changed a bit.
Yeah, so I can share my screen. Sorry, I keep getting all these things saying you need to update your computer.
Uh-oh.
Let me, hopefully it won't kick me out. Okay. Can you guys see that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So what I did is I went through and tried to sort of tag the things that have been done or have been mostly done, and the things that have been started but perhaps aren't finished. So the things that have the like bold checked mark are things that have more or less been completed, and the things that have the light checkbox, those are things that have maybe been started but haven't quite been finished, or things that are just getting started now or are sort of on our plates right now. So for instance, we are currently, I'm writing up a proposal for a comprehensive transportation plan study to be done. So that is just in its sort of infancy stages, but so that's why that has that gray box there. We have the trolley service pilot, so I gave that one for the fixed route bus service. It's not quite fixed route bus service, but kind of. I'm also working with some of our regional partners to see if there are other options going forward that we could maybe tap into, or something that we could start. And similarly, there's other ride services that are being offered in different towns through a grant program that because there was no town staff to help with it before, we opted out of being a part of. But now going forward, we might be able to tap into those processes and be able to also get those ride sharing abilities. We hired a transportation planner. So that gets a full check mark. Laura did a great job of putting together all of the public transportation. I'm sure that there's other things that we've missed, but it's a really good start. And so I think that we can say that that's something that we've done. That information is all available on the town's website now under transportation. And we have started to sort of prioritize our projects that will be a part of the comprehensive transportation study. But we've also started looking at what sort of things are top of mind, what things have already started, or what is sort of the low hanging fruit that we can really start to work on now, or start to get adequate support for, so that we can jumpstart in the future when we do get funding. But those are kind of the things that we've either done, or things that could be done soon or are in progress. But there's still many things that we need to be working on, looking at existing services, transportation for students, things like that, the retail and food delivery, maintenance, winter transportation, something that I want to sort of look at more this winter, see how things are going, and see if there's things that we can do ahead of time to make sure that people who are trying to get around in different ways other than just driving have the opportunity to do so, or at least what are things we can do in the future to make sure that things are going well. So, for instance, are there opportunities for getting covered bike parking and things like that that might make it easier for somebody, as well as I think that one of the things we were wondering was, when do sidewalks and things like that, when are they cleared of snow if there is a big snowstorm? We know that main roads are typically the first things to be plowed, mainly because we need to be able to get emergency services someplace if something goes wrong. But after that, what is sort of the plan of attack? And I think that sometimes it changes based on need. If there's, for instance, an emergency, obviously that changes things. But if it's like right during the holiday season, they want to try to get the businesses dug out first so that they don't lose any business. But having that more sort of clear, I think would be helpful to some people that are trying to either walk or bike more often. But we also can't be sticking to get CPW to be sticking to a schedule necessarily, because every storm is different and the needs are different in every different situation. So, but these are sort of the basics when we look at our roadmap again of where we're going and what we've done.
So on the maintenance and management plan, I think you could put a light gray checkbox there, because Public Works is putting in the budget request for a level of spending that they're more comfortable with than last year. So I think that's moving, starting to move.
Great.
Yeah, the same, and the safety improvements too.
The safety improvements. Or the safety improvements. Oh, for both. I see. I understand. I'll put it up here.
Yeah, yeah.
Great.
Okay, questions, comments, thoughts about the roadmap? What should
I
we
did
do?
I did have a thought about the, I think it's fantastic that we're submitting for a grant to do a comprehensive plan. But I am curious, sorry, Erin, you may want to clarify that.
We're not submitting for a grant. We're just, I'm putting together a proposal to give to Carrie LaFleur, the town manager. As I understand it, there has been money that has sort of been earmarked to do transportation things. And after speaking with Elizabeth Hughes, the town planner, Steve Dukerin, the town engineer, and Alan Cathcart and Marcia Rasmussen, we think that doing a comprehensive transportation study is really sort of the first step towards doing a lot of other things. Because once we have, for instance, a priority list saying, these are the projects that have been recognized as being necessary, whether it be, connecting sidewalks or putting in crosswalks or things like that. It'll be much easier for us to submit for grants because we'll have them right in front of us, as opposed to when a grant comes up and say, MAPC says you have 2 weeks to submit this grant. The first week is generally spent, frantically emailing back and forth and driving around the town saying, where's there a project? What can we fit into this box? Because we know that there are limited funds for different things, which takes away from the time that we can spend working on other projects, as well as it's not very effective. It's the things that we notice first rather than the things that are necessary. So we do have some money, as I understand it, set aside to be able to do that.
And that would be done through a partnership with a consultant?
Yes.
Okay. One question that I had was, I know the Complete Streets funding comes up on a cyclical basis. When is the next submission for Complete Streets?
I believe that it is usually in the summer and the spring when they ask for proposals. I could be wrong on that. I know that we did not submit this last time around because we are still working through our last couple of projects, and they don't like for you to submit for projects when you still have open projects.
Got it. And will the projects, I know Hubbard Street is almost complete or nearing, maybe it is complete. I haven't been there in a couple of weeks.
Complete-ish.
Complete-ish. And then, what's the timeline on the Commonwealth Avenue project at this point?
I believe that it's gotten delayed because of National Grid, I believe, is having to do some work, and their schedule has, it always happens. It hasn't quite lined up with what we originally thought it would. And there's been some delays because of that. I'm not 100% sure. I've gotten the latest update on it, but I think that it is delayed. I know that, which is unfortunate.
Excuse me.
Bill, did you have a question?
Erin, could you explain what the relationship is between the current priority list in the Complete Streets project and what you and the other staff were thinking about in terms of this new planning study? Are you planning to sort of take what has already been developed as a list of projects, or are you starting from scratch? What's the thinking?
Yeah, so actually I have a good visual. I'll have to go find it, but um, okay, here we go. So this is still in draft form, but it gives you a good idea of why I think that it's important that we really take a closer look at the priority list. So what I want to do is I want to take the current priority list that we have and use that as sort of a jumping off point. Because while the projects that are on there aren't bad projects, and many of them, are very necessary, but they don't necessarily, it wasn't taking a look at the entire town. It was taking a look at the projects that were brought to them by the community. So if somebody in your neighborhood was going up to the microphone a lot during the public forum, then they may have had more projects submitted than any other neighborhood, something like that. And I think that this is a good visual to sort of show you what I mean. Let me make this bigger. Ooh, that's too far. Sorry. Sorry, everybody, I lost it. Hold on. Oh. Okay. So our GIS person, Jill, she created this map for me, which shows you where all the priority list projects are. So
They're all downtown?
So they're all in West Concord.
Yeah, it's mainly in West Concord.
That's right, it's West Concord.
Yeah, there's a few.
Talk about an outspoken neighborhood.
Not to say that these are necessary projects, but you can really see that there's a big swath of town that was not necessarily being represented.
Yeah, well, that's the only neighborhood that has a committee.
So I really want to go through and to make sure that, for instance, this, let's say that, this project right here around Monument Square, well, what if there really needs to be a sidewalk because there's a sidewalk along here, but there's nothing that connects the two and it's very busy or something like that. We want to make sure that we have those connection points so that we're not doing projects in a vacuum. I think that, doing them sort of ad hoc is not the way to go about it. We need that connectivity. We need that holistic approach.
Okay, so if anyone knows of any potential projects, Phil, for instance, that are missing, for instance, some of the things that the Safe Routes to School, that one that got not done or turned down, that should be on the list.
Yeah, and I think that that's, when we go through this process, it's going to be a very involved process. There's going to be a lot of community engagement. There's going to be, I think, a big sort of push to work with TAC and to work with community groups, to work with the schools to make sure that we are trying to be as comprehensive as possible. But to also not just be taking it from neighbors and from the community, but also going out and looking around and saying, I know that nobody has pointed out that there's no connection point here, but we went out and we saw that there's this missing, this missing piece of the puzzle. So taking a more holistic approach, taking a more systematic approach to make sure that we really are covering as much as possible and not just, who's speaking the loudest at meetings and things like that.
So right now would be a good time to just start sort of coming out with your ideas. If anyone's got thoughts, suggestions on things that might be considered, now's the time to get them on a list that Erin's working on, and we'll see where they go as we engage the community.
Yeah, it'll be a very long process that won't really start until we have a consultant. We've started the process formally. But if you have something that you know of, feel free to, to send me an email, and I could start sort of an ad hoc list. Even though I said I wouldn't do things ad hoc, I can keep a running tab, and we can see if we can add it
Have an
in.
ad hoc list. Right.
Well, so just two things. First, I'm really excited to hear that you're taking a very holistic view of like how can, because I think that neighbor input, obviously nobody knows their neighborhood as well as people who live there. But I think that thinking about things more holistically, like how do we really create systems for people to get around town, I think is really important. And so, I mean, like one of the things that I think we should talk about is, like the major routes, because, we can talk about the interconnectivity of these two sidewalks, but if it's two sidewalks that don't get you anywhere, but if we're talking about 62 Sudbury Road, like the major roads that once you can get on there, you can really get somewhere. I think those are the most important. And the reason I bring that up is that, I know that these consultant processes can take a long time. And so if we don't think that we're going to have a prioritized list by the time the grant process opens up in the spring, I think it would be a good idea perhaps for this committee to come up with, well, what's one ambitious project that we could submit for if this prioritized list isn't ready by then? Because I wouldn't want, this is a moment in history where there's more infrastructure money available right now than there may ever be again. So we wouldn't want to miss an opportunity to get a project like, let's get a complete street from the Bedford line to the Maynard line going right through our two town centers. Like that project could connect two halves of our community, tons of people to schools. Like that would be a huge, huge thing for us. So I think that it would be a good idea for us to think, okay, could we pick like at least one thing that we can all agree consensus wise, like this is a good thing for us to submit for if there isn't, if we're not ready with a fully prioritized list by then. So I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Didn't we take a shot at that when we designated specific roads that we thought a complete streets design would be good for instance, starting at the Bedford line and going up Sudbury Road, and and I forget the details, but we did that. I think that's something you should include, Aaron, and as something to discuss.
Mm-hmm. I also will say that like the priority list that exists now, it's not, it's not going to be scrapped or anything like that. So if there was a project to come, or if there was, funding to come up and we've completed our other complete streets projects, we're not necessarily going to say we're not submitting for anything until this, this study is done or something like that. But I think that we would be trying to be careful about, for instance, doing one small section in the center of 62 and nothing, on the other side. We'd want to make sure that we were doing something that was done thoughtfully, as opposed to just something that will fit the bill. Because I think that a lot of what transportation has done in the past, at least in Concord, is it's where is there money available? What can we do with the grants that are available? Not to say that there haven't been great projects that have been done, but I think that we can take those sort of larger goals and expand it to have sort of that more holistic and connectivity, so that we have that available to Concord.
Okay, Mark.
Yeah, thanks very much. I mean, I completely agree about sort of looking at things holistically as well as opportunistically. In terms of preparing to get more, resident or people, input, might be good for us to think about the kinds of, kind of broad questions that would actually lead to something. So it's easy enough to sort of say, well, do you have a problem with this particular place? But I think if there may be some way of asking people, going around town, doing your normal things, what do you think is a challenge that could be addressed by infrastructure? So I'm being a little vague about it, but how you prime the pump for the questioning and things could be very significant. The other thing is going back to your slide of the plan of all the different elements on the plan. Not the map, but before that, with regard to the winter conditions, it occurs to me, and maybe this is something everybody's thinking about, but it just sort of popped in my head, that one way of looking at it is in good weather, people are walking, biking, driving, doing whatever. In bad weather, or when it gets dark earlier, or the sidewalks are icy, no matter how you maintain them, they're icy. Another way to look at it is how would people change their transportation needs when they say, I normally, I'm a mile from town center or from West Concord, and I walk when there's no ice, but when there's ice, I do not walk and I don't feel like driving. These kind of things. So maybe another piece to add to that winter difference, seasonal difference, is people's choices, not just how do we keep the infrastructure as functional as possible, assuming the same usage pattern, but what other alternatives would there be? Because, for instance, maybe certain types of private or public shuttles or things like that might be even more important in the winter, when people are, concerned about ice on the road or on the sidewalks, etc.
Absolutely.
Karen Smith, you have your hand up. Please identify yourself.
Hi, Karen Smith, 66 Upland Road. I was going to broach a topic in the public comments at the end, but it's very relevant to what you're talking about right now. I met with, along with some neighbors here in Upland, with Officer Holsinger and Justin Richardson at the end of August to discuss traffic calming on Upland Road. This is a conversation we've been trying to have for a number of years. And Ron and Justin did agree that there is a vehicle speed problem on Upland. And we identified a number of infrastructure changes that could be made to help address the speeding problem. I think the one that is probably the simplest and probably most effective would be to install a raised sidewalk at the intersection of Upland and Pine. Now, Ron and Justin both thought it was a good thing, but put up their hands and said, this is above our pay grade. We asked who we should talk to, to get some momentum on this, and he sent us to you. So that's the reason that I'm at this meeting. I know this project is not on the Complete Streets spreadsheet. I've looked at that. This does seem to be the kind of project that very much routes to school, because that intersection is a route for students to go to the Thoreau School. And as it stands right now, that intersection is very dangerous. Anyone is not familiar with it, it's a problem with people speeding up Pine Street. There's no stop sign at the top of Pine. There's a crosswalk across Upland. Most cars probably are not aware of it. It doesn't even have the zebra stripes on it. And it's quite frankly not safe. And it also contributes to the speed that we have on Upland Road over to Old Marlboro, because this route is a cut through and people are looking to move fast.
So that would be a candidate to add to the list that you have there, that where all those West Concord ones are, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's not one of the ones that's on that.
If it's not already there, it may. Is it there, Erin? Do you think?
No, it's not.
It's not. Okay.
Unless there's a newer version of the document, but the one that's dated 2019, it's not there.
Right.
Yeah, the list hasn't been updated since it was originally.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
No.
Karen?
Yeah.
You're talking just about the section from Pine Street to Old Marlboro, right? Not the other section that leads down to Harrington, or are you talking about all of it?
No, I'm only talking about the part that is really what you're looking at there. So that's at the top of Pine, looking down Upland towards Old Marlboro.
Towards Old Marlboro.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
yeah.
there's a speeding problem on the other end, but we were just meeting with Ron and Justin to discuss that.
And
that
what was the
portion.
fix? That picture was great. Did you put that up, Erin? Where'd that come from? No?
No, I think it was Laura.
That was me.
Oh, great there. So
That
on
was
this
pretty
pic-
quick, Laura.
Yeah. Where exactly,
good.
what are you looking for in this picture? What to be done?
So right there is the crosswalk. It's
Yeah.
not very noticeable because it does not have the zebra stripes.
Right,
And the problem we have is people come up Pine Street, which would be, on the left side,
right.
and they come up very fast because there is no stop sign. There's no curb. And basically what had been the area between the road and the sidewalk at Upland on the right-hand side has been completely destroyed because people take that turn wide and fast and then zip all the way to Old Marlboro Road.
Okay.
You're saying that the curbstone has been destroyed? Karen?
So-
I'm not-
Right,
Keep the
yeah, if
picture
you-
there, Laura, stop moving it, please.
Okay, so that's fine. So if you're looking straight down Upland Road and just to
Yep.
your right, you can see there's a stone wall that, yeah, exactly there. Now, the people put the stone wall there to protect their property because there have been people who've driven up the street onto their property
Ah,
because they think the road is straight. And then
yeah.
people will typically take a very wide and fast turn and drive beyond the edge of the road over to the
Gotcha.
right.
Right.
Okay.
So a curb would act as a traffic calming because it would narrow. the
Yes,
effective
that was
road.
one of the things that we asked for.
In fact, you should, in that case, probably put curbing on both sides to emphasize the narrowness of the road and maybe put a tree in there. It'd be interesting to know where the limits of the right of way are.
There's probably, I would say, maybe about a 2.5 foot. You might call it a tree belt or, an area between the edge of the road and the sidewalk. But the reality is that sidewalk that you see on the right-hand side is essentially useless. It's important because it's actually how you safely cross Upland Road to go down Pine at that point. But the sidewalk is only in front of that house because everyone else up the street has had the sidewalk removed. So the sidewalk is on the left-hand, right, on that left-hand side that we're looking at. But then if you're going to go down Pine Street, you have to cross Upland to then go down Pine Street.
Yeah, it's important to know where the right of way limits actually are, because if, for instance, those hedges up Upland Road, if those are in the right of way, they can be removed. Because you can't just put them there. Okay, that's good. That's very helpful. Thanks.
Yeah. So it's a dangerous intersection for a number of reasons. A number of things contribute to it. But if we were to pick one thing that we think could help with traffic calming and to make that intersection safer, it would be a raised crosswalk between, across Upland, between the two sidewalks.
One way of dealing with that, Erin, might be that there may be other places that have similar characteristics, and you might be able to lump those together as a group of things that are basically the same problem manifested in different places, and consider that for a possible project, which is, to fix the places where whatever the description is that they have in common.
Yeah, I will say that the raised crosswalk I know that was one of the things that was originally brought up for the Main Street and Walden crossing. But there's concerns because plows tend to either be destroyed by them or destroy them quickly. Because you can't, especially if there's snow on the road, you can't necessarily see where the raised crosswalk is. And so it makes it difficult to plow. But I think that there's definitely a lot that could be done there.
I know that Public Works says that, and I'll tell you, there are hundreds of raised bumps in the city of Boston, especially in the Jamaica Plain neighborhood. And I sympathize with Public Works, but they should have a conversation with the City of Boston Public Works Department and find out how they do it. I
I'm
will
just,
tell that
I'm just
to Alan
repeating what I've
Platt.
heard. I don't know.
I'll tell
I've never
Alan
tried to drive a
Platt.
plow.
Oh, we have a few people. Mark, go ahead.
No, I think this is a really great, I mean, this is an important specific problem to solve, should be added to a list to study. There's a lot going on here. I mean, I can see in the picture, I pulled up a picture too, and it does look like people making wide last minute turns are swerving and digging into the sidewalk, but what remains. But Karen, did you say there's no stop sign?
So there is no
Oh,
stop sign coming up Pine, but there is a stop sign on Upland in both directions.
Yeah, I think the
That's
reason,
back-
I
that's
think there's a
backwards, if
legitimate
anything.
reason for that, which is that if it's winter time and the road is icy or snowy and you're coming up Pine Street and you came to a complete stop there, you might slide back down the hill.
Okay.
It has certain characteristics that have probably caused that to be the way it is. There may be a way to deal with that by changing the grade. I don't know, but I think.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and actually that's been the reason that it has been stated that there is not a stop sign there, but the grade was changed when they redid the bridge. I think that was about 8 or 10 years ago. And, you know, there are a lot of places, you know, similar to what you're talking about, how other towns do have, you know, raised crosswalks or speed humps. And, you know, you can go a lot of places in Vermont and New Hampshire and Maine, and they have much steeper hills and stop signs.
I just don't see how it can, anyway, we're getting into nitty gritty,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't see how it can work myself without a stop sign. That doesn't make sense. At the very least, if for some reason a stop sign could be put in, maybe some kind of exceptional law could be put into places that you have to proceed at a very slow speed.
Yeah, a stop sign is one of the things.
It's the best way.
Yeah, we asked for a stop sign. I mean, there are about 7 suggestions that we gave. Yeah, and you know, nothing's happened yet, but
Okay, I think we've got it.
Yeah.
It's very good explanation. Thank you very much.
okay, great, thank you.
Okay, Laura,
Thank
did you
you.
want to say something?
Yes. So first of all, I know this intersection so well because I ride through it on my bike every single day that I take my son to preschool. And I take a left down Pine Street. And it is very difficult to see if there is a car coming up Pine Street, if you're taking a left onto Pine Street. And if somebody has decided to take that extremely fast left turn off of Pine Street onto Upland Road, they're very likely to hit a car or a bicycle that's edging out to try to see if there is a car coming up the road. So I have often wondered the same thing. Why is there not a stop sign at the top of this road? Because it is absolutely a safety hazard for not only bicyclists, but also cars and pedestrians. And so this actually raises a really interesting like process question, which is like, what is the process for this committee to make a recommendation on something like this? Because I do not know if we are a decision-making body on things like stop signs or
No, we're not.
or how would we make an advisory committee?
Well, there actually is a committee, which is a committee that's basically Public
Scout
Works
staff.
and the police department. I forget, what's it called, Aaron?
And me, it's the traffic management group.
Right, and that they look at specifically this exact type of problem, which is there's a safety issue. It's a very specific safety issue. And, you know, you bring it to them and you say, you know, this is dangerous. Here are our facts. This is what we're asking you to do. And get a response from them. Have you tried that, Karen, by the way?
No, this was the first step based on Ron and Justin's recommendation was to meet with this group. So I'm happy to follow up with, you know, the traffic management.
Well, he didn't want his boss to have to deal with it, so take it to the traffic management group.
One thing I will say is that stop signs have to go through the select board apparently. So it is a slightly longer process that will eventually probably end up back with Terry. So sorry, Terry.
Well, if there is any way for us to make an advisory on this particular stop sign, I am in full support of a stop sign there.
Well, we're a townwide committee, and unless you're going to look at all the places that need stop signs, I don't see how you can just say, well, this is the one we think is the most important in town. We don't know that. Right?
But I think that argument is that if we can't fix all the problems, we should fix none of the problems is not
Well,
a good
I think you've got to
policy.
make a case, because if, I'm just telling you I think you might encounter if you push it forward.
Yeah.
I mean, our job is, I don't think our job as a committee, Terry can correct me, is to look at specific neighborhood problems, but to look at the problems of the town and figure out how to deal with them in a rational manner. Mark?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think this is not the kind of thing that the TAC would vote on to make a TAC recommendation, but I think part of our function should be to hear from the community about specific examples and broad examples. And to me, this is very informative, because I'm sure this is not the only place in town where there's a T intersection and no stop sign, and it's being used as a high-speed cut through by some people. I mean, the combination of these systematic factors applied to all the roads in town will probably pull up other cases like this. But I do think Karen has to go to this traffic management group.
Yeah.
But us, as Laura had said, some of us individually would certainly support to that group or to the select board as individuals. That sounds like a problem that should be fixed.
Right.
So should I reach out to them directly, or Erin, should I work through you to go to the traffic?
Yeah,
management?
you can reach out to me and
Okay.
I'll sort of have you write up a case almost, and explain what the issues are. If Ron has already been there, and same with Aaron, then that should be easier for us to if everybody's on the same page, then we can discuss it more.
Okay, I'll send you an email follow-up. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, where are we? What happened to our
Sorry,
agenda?
one more thing before we move on is I do think the other thing that this is illustrative of is the raised crosswalk question. I think that is very much something that the TAC should be talking about. Like, what are the traffic calming measures that we as a community are going to move forward with? Are we going to use raised crosswalks? Are we going to use bump outs, like some of the Dutch style calming measures where you can put, I think that those like larger design questions are one that we should be talking about, because our complete streets policy right now is very vague. And the more that we can be specific about, we like bump outs, we as a community want raised crosswalks, and we're willing to put up with the nuisance of that. Like those are decisions that we have to make sort of holistically as a community. And it doesn't sound like, it sounds like we're the committee to do that, unless that's just a staff function.
It's a good point. And I think there are specific, we have to avoid jumping into specific solutions for specific problems as a committee. But there are things that are in the wind, like Public Works doesn't like traffic calming. Doesn't like traffic calming stuff, bumps in the road and stuff like that. We need to get clarification. We need to get them and anyone else to take a position on that, because we need to understand what the objections are to the various traffic calming approaches. Clearly Historic Districts Commission people have objections to certain types of signage or things they review as unhistoric. We need to get some positions, I think, and understand what the town collectively thinks is appropriate or not. And we need people to justify the positions that we believe they have right now, so we can examine them. I'm not sure how we do that, Erin, but maybe that has to be part of this whole process of the big study.
That is one thing that I've put into it, is sort of my trying to lay out the basics, is coming up with best practices, whether those are things that have already been laid out and are, for instance, best practices Massachusetts wide or New England wide or something like that, or things that we want to specifically have about Concord.
I think that there's something hidden though that we've got to deal with, which is that there are these things that are apparently no-nos, like Public Works doesn't like X or Historic Districts doesn't like Y. we need to get those out in the open, okay? We need to understand if those are real, if there's a real basis for them that will, that you can stand up against public safety and say, oh yeah, okay, that's reasonable, or it's not reasonable.
I think that
Go ahead.
from what I understand, I think that some of it is, for instance, like on more major roads where they're trying to quickly, for instance, plow or something like that, they don't want to be concerned about, like, for instance, they wouldn't want a raised crosswalk on Main Street because that might make it difficult to plow
Sure.
if they're trying to do things quickly and things like that. So I think that a lot of it, it's always the typical answer, it depends, right?
Well, we need to know what the
Area.
depends are. What are the criteria? When is it okay with Public Works and when isn't it okay?
So I think your point is really well taken, Nick, and at least the way, if I can restate it, it seems as if we need to get some information so we understand how to make policy. Because if policy is being made, and I don't mean to diss anybody and be disrespectful, but if the policy for the town is being made by the guys who drive the DPW trucks instead of the select board, I see that as a problem, because the select board is supposed to be making policy for the town and the town manager, of course. So I 100% agree. We need to get the information out so that we're clear about it. And, getting to the Historic District Commission, for example, I mean, their role, I think, is important in Concord Center, but at least some of it is really an aesthetic consideration. So when they say, well, we like X better than Y, that's aesthetics. It doesn't have anything to do with public safety. And at the end of the day, I think our job really does connect with public safety directly. There's not necessarily so. And I think if a judgment call is made with respect to, raised sidewalks or raised crosswalks, excuse me, that ought to be made eventually by the policymakers, by Terry and the rest of the select board, not necessarily by, one particular board who has one particular focus.
Right. Yeah, one of the key phrases that I've never seen defined is historic character.
Yeah,
And, because, there's a lot of stuff, including in the long range plan, about the value of preserving the historic character. But I've never seen it defined. I don't know. I wouldn't know, if it's what you say and it's just somebody's personal aesthetic opinion. Well, that's interesting. Terry.
Right. So to answer your question before, yes, this committee is not supposed to take a view on one particular stop sign on one particular street, but to look at best practices and a global point of view. So I was really excited to see the roadmap and how much progress you're making already. That's really great. And it would be really great if the select board could hear from the Transportation Advisory Committee eventually, when you've looked at the global picture. What are your recommendations about bump outs, about raised crosswalks, about stop signs, all of this kind of stuff? And then we can make a policy. And I think in order to do that, my suggestion is that you have people from Public Works, HDC, whatever, come into your meeting and explain, because these people have, let's say, a master's degree in planning or whatever, and they have a point of view. So you can hear from them and discuss it with them and figure out together, is it just the truck drivers that are having trouble plowing? Or is there something else going on? Because I don't think the select board has any idea. So if we could hear a recommendation from you guys after you hear from them, that would be most helpful.
So Terry, last issue I brought up, which is the definition of historic character. Do you think that's written down anywhere, if there's any criteria for it? And would it be fair for the select board just to help the Transportation Advisory Committee? Let me give you a background. I keep coming up against, well, we could do X, but no, there's historic character, and I don't know, preserving the historic character, what it is. would it be reasonable for us to request that the select board get clarification from the Historic Commission, the Historic District Commission, a definition of historic character? Sort of what exactly are we trying to preserve and what are we afraid of not preserving? Because
I think that's a great idea. But so I think that like at one meeting, you could have the Historic Commission come in. Another meeting could be DPW, another one could be HDC, and you could hear all these different types of points of view and public safety. You know, there's lots of groups that you need to talk with.
okay, so you're suggesting that we just do it, attempt to do it directly with them.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then see where it goes. Okay,
Right. You can either have a joint meeting, or you can have a staff person come in like Alan Cathcart, or you can have liaisons so that, let's say, Nick, you meet with the chair of HDC. You can do
Yeah.
it any way you want, as long as you have a dialogue with them. And you
great.
don't need
Okay,
the select board to run interference. You can just do it.
okay, thank you. Let's see, Mark.
Yeah, thanks. No, I absolutely think that this committee, our committee can also be kind of, clearinghouse for these type of challenges and hear from, DPW or whoever is dealing with things, historical commission. I mean, however it's done through the select board or directly, I think it's great to get clarification of these conflicts, because otherwise it is just a case by case basis, et cetera. I wanted to say one more thing about the general traffic calming techniques and choice of different ones and whether they're acceptable or not, and stop signs and the usage and all that, which is that systematically in town, if somebody enters a town and there's only one raised crosswalk, or there's only 2 stop signs or something, that doesn't modify their behavior in general. But if, you drive into Cambridge, or you were, talk about some places in Boston, Jamaica Plain, et cetera. I mean, if it becomes a normal thing to say, I'm coming to a crossroads and maybe there will be a raised crosswalk or something, it changes behavior in terms of the uniformity of applying these techniques within a town, instead of we, do one technique one place, another technique another place, et cetera. So I think that's another benefit of a broad approach of, what techniques does Concord want to prefer?
Okay, yes. Laura?
Yeah, so this is a question which is, it sounds, I love the idea of having a conversation about, there are best practices that are known by traffic engineers and by city planners, et cetera, about traffic calming. And I think that it might be very valuable for members of this committee, members of the select board, members of staff to come together and have some kind of a facilitated discussion. I don't know if it's a public forum, but to have somebody come in and present, here are modern traffic calming options. Now let's have a discussion about it. And if we're all in the same place at the same time, we could have a much more rich discussion than if we try to silo these conversations with different committees. Because I think that if we had the Historic Districts Commission and the Disability Commission in the same room talking about, well, what are the advantages of, this kind of crosswalk over this kind of crosswalk, I think we'll have a much better conversation and come to decisions a lot faster, which is good, and also come to much more well-informed decisions as a community. So I don't know what a timeline for something like that would be, but I would certainly be very happy to help organize it. If I love events, you know me, I love events, so I'm happy to help organize an event like that.
Okay, we'll put you down for it. Hi, Merrill, you have a question, a comment?
You're
You have to
muted.
unmute.
You're muted, Merrill, and
There we
identify
go.
yourself.
I just wanted to mention that the Disability Commission is always interested in having joint meetings, because doing something unilaterally just doesn't make sense.
Right.
And the word doesn't get out, and there can be no discussion. So we'd be very happy to participate jointly.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. Yeah, I think probably it's a good point. So for instance, a discussion with historic district would make a lot of sense to have someone from disabilities involved with that. That's an excellent point. Instead of us just talking to them about it. I think in order to make those things, get them rolling though, I think we may need some one-on-one meetings or, one-on-one meetings just to get it started, because trying to organize, a 3-committee joint meeting is probably impossible given people's schedules. So
How many stakeholding committees are there that we are going to have to engage in this? I mean, we have disabilities, we have traffic management group.
there are a few. I mean, there's several departments. There are quite a few. The transportation cuts across a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
All
So,
the
I mean,
climate and sustainability boards.
Yeah.
I mean, I see us
Climate
coming
action
out of
board.
this with a pros and cons spreadsheet, which, can be used for the select board to tailor the solutions, to the specific problem areas. I mean, that intersection clearly has challenges, but they're different challenges than what you run into on Walden Street. So, having a broad menu of options with the various stakeholders saying, this is why we don't like it here, but we do like this. I think it will really give us the best informed solutions, or at least recommendations to the select board.
Would a meeting like that need to have all members of all the different groups
You'd
at
have
it,
to-
or could we
you'd
have
to establish a
liaisons?
quorum. It's difficult to organize, because first you've got to fit the schedules of enough people who would constitute a quorum together. So it's not trivial. So that's why I think to get the ball rolling, and then maybe you can at some point say, okay, now we've got enough content that we need to engage as 2 committees or 3 committees meeting together to make a decision about what we want to do after we've done this prep work. Okay, where were we on our agenda? No, I've lost my agenda again.
We're on liaison and observer comments.
Oh, good. I think we've had a lot. Any other comments from the public or from Terry? I see no hands up.
Well,
So
Terry's turning on.
Well, actually, I wanted to mention that multi-town meeting. I think Aaron might have been there and Laura was there. The multi-town meeting with the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. That was a really good meeting. And I got several comments thanking Laura for all of her insights, and about there's going to be, I guess, uniform rules on e-bikes and on well, Laura, you can explain it probably much better.
Yeah, well, actually, there were not going to be any rules on e-bikes. The meeting was of all of the towns that are touched by the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. At the moment, the problem that they were trying to solve for, I believe it was just you and me, Terry. I think Aaron was out of the country at the time. And the problem they were trying to solve for is that the towns all have different rules and signage. So for instance, we discovered that Concord had a rule that the trail closed after dusk, which nobody had intended for that to be a rule, given that it's for commuters. And if the trail is closed after dusk and you're getting off the train and you have to walk home, then you can't walk home on the trail. So so there were some rules that were out of date. There were rules that were inconsistent across the different towns. There was a lot of concern about just like over signage, just way more rules and words than any person will reasonably read when entering a trail. So the list of rules was updated and consolidated and clarified and trimmed down to the essentials. I don't have the final rules in front of me to share with you, but there was broad consensus on what they came up with. The things that were not decided at this meeting were any rules related to e-bikes, because the legislation is still being worked out, and there's more consistent rules at the state level now that we do have this new legislation coming out, which is just that class 1 and class 2 e-bikes should be treated the same as regular bikes because they go roughly the same speed. And class 3 e-bikes don't have a definition because they go much faster, so they're not being treated the same. Except for the fact that e-bikes are, don't quote, well, I'm not going to say that because I don't know if it's true. But that is what I know to be true, is that they're on a path like the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. They are treated the same unless a rule is created to make them different. So for now, there's no
Alright.
decision on that. Go ahead.
That set of agreed rules, could you make sure that Erin has it and that maybe it gets to the committee?
Right, so that
Well,
was gonna be my question. I do have a question from Barbara Pike, who is friends of Bruce Freeman Rail Trail and one of the people who set it up. And she's asking how this town is going to, each of the 7 towns has to adopt these rules. So Erin, I don't know the process, but I think it's gonna go through Carrie somehow. And I don't even have a set of these rules, but I think you should have it, and the Transportation Advisory Committee should have it, and Carrie should have it, and we should be able to figure out. I'll forward you, Erin, this email so we can figure out what our process is in Concord, because each of the 7 towns agreed to get these rules adopted so that all 7 towns on the Bruce Freeman Trail have the same set of rules. Thank you, Laura, for remembering. It's not e-bikes. It's all the other rules about ride on the right side of the road and be considerate and no littering and you know, no dogs and whatever the rules were.
No, just to be clear, dogs are still allowed. It's stay to the right. Like I don't have the exact wording. I did write them down though, basically, which is you know, stay to the right.
Please, let's not go over them now. Just send them out
Pedestrians
so we
have,
can all read
yeah,
them.
anyway, they're all very common sense. Dogs are still allowed on the trail, just to be clear.
Okay.
You are supposed to pick up after them. That's the rule. You have to pick up after your dog. But there were the things that were not decided on, there were no specific rules made about e-bikes, and there were no specific rules made about speed limit, but there was a lot of talk about speed limits and maybe a future discussion about speed limits.
Right.
So that's
So
the
the point is, we should all have these rules and we should figure out how the town is going to adopt them.
I
So-
believe that it's just the select board has to vote to adopt that. No.
No, I think it's the town manager here, but I'm asking Erin to find out exactly what our process is going to be.
Yeah, I'll look into it.
Quick question, though. Is this only with regard to the Bruce Freeman Trail or, okay. Well, we have to watch that too, because in the same way that different rules for different towns on one trail creates confusion, different rules on different trails within the same town is going to do the same.
Right.
Nick, you're muted.
There we go. There were dogs barking again. Let's see. So I think that's it. That wraps it up. I don't see any more hands up. So I move that we adjourn the meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay. Laura,
Aye.
Dan already Dan seconded.
Aye.
I say aye as well. Phil, are you there?
Aye.
Okay. And who did I miss?
Mark.
Mark,
Mark.
hi.
Okay. If your picture isn't in front of me, I may miss you sometimes. Okay,
you.
great. Meeting adjourned. Good
The
discussion.
ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a good night, folks.
Too.